Hi there, I'm going to read chapter 27 of Lila, An Inquiry into Morals by Robert M. Pirsig. In the dream, he thought someone was shooting at him, and then he realized this was no dream. Someone was pounding on the boat hull. "Okay," he shouted, "just a minute." It must be the marina attendant wanting to get paid or something. He got up and, in his pajamas, slid the hatch cover open. It was someone he didn't know. He was black, with a big grin on his face and a white tunic that was so bright and clean it knocked out everything else. He looked like he'd just stepped off an Uncle Ben's rice package. "First Mate Jemison reporting for duty, sir," he said, and snapped a smart salute, still grinning. The tunic had big, shiny brass buttons. Phaedrus wondered where he had found something like that. He seemed to be grinning at his own ludicrousness. "What do you want?" Phaedrus said. "I'm here to start working." "You've got the wrong boat." "No, I ain't. You just don't know me in this uniform." "Where's Lila?" he said. Phaedrus suddenly recognized him. He was Jamie, the one he had met in the bar. "She's still sleeping," Phaedrus said. "Sleeping?" Jamie threw his head back and laughed. "Man, you can't let her get away with that. It's past 10 in the morning. Jamie pointed to his gold wristwatch. "Time to get her up." His voice was very loud. Phaedrus noticed a head from another boat was watching them. Jamie started to laugh again, then looked up and down the boat with a smile. "Well, you sure had me fooled. The way Lila told it, this boat was at least 5 times this big. And all you got is this pee-wee little thing?" He glanced twice at Phaedrus to check the reaction to this. That's all right. It's plenty big enough for me. It's just Lila had me fooled." Phaedrus tried to shake the cobwebs out of his head. What the hell was this all about? "What did Lila tell you?" he asked. "Lila told me to come here for work this morning, so here I am." "That's crazy," Phaedrus said. "She told you wrong." The grin disappeared from Jamie's face. He looked puzzled, hurt. Then he said, "I think I'm going to have a little talk with her," and stepped aboard. The way he jumped over the lifeline showed he was no sailor, no permission, dirty street shoes on. Phaedrus was about to call him on the dirty shoes, but then suddenly he saw Richard Rigel coming down the dock. Rigel waved at him and came over. Where did he come from? "I'm going down to talk to her," Jamie said. Phaedrus shook his head. "She's tired." Jamie shook his head back. "No offense," he said, "but you don't know shit about Lila." "No, she's tired." "No, man, she always talks like that. I know how to fix that." Jamie went down the hatchway. "We'll be right up," he said. Phaedrus started to feel alarmed. He saw that Rigel was staring at him. He said to Rigel, "I didn't know you were here." "I've been here for a while," Rigel said. "Who is that?" "Some friend of Lila's." "Is she still here?" "She's in trouble." He looked up at Rigel. "She's really in trouble." Rigel squinted. He looked as though he was going to say something, but then he didn't. Finally he said, "What are you going to do about it?" "I don't know," Phaedrus said. "I just woke up. I haven't got anything in mind yet." Before Rigel could answer, they heard a low, deep noise below, then a shout, then a scuffling sound, and then another shout. Suddenly Jamie's face appeared. His white Uncle Ben jacket had a big spot of blood by one of the buttons. His hand against his cheek had blood on it. "That fucking whore!" he shouted. He came out the hatch on the deck. He reached for the hatch rail, and Phaedrus saw his cheek had a bloody gash. "Goddamn bitch, I'm going to kill her." Phaedrus wondered where he could find a rag to stop the bleeding. Maybe below somewhere. "Leave me off here," Jamie said. "I'm calling the police." "What happened?" Rigel said. Over his shoulder, the face of another boat owner now stared. "She tried to kill me." Jamie looked at him. Something in Rigel's expression seemed to stop him. Jamie stepped over the boat's lifeline to the dock. He looked at Rigel again. "She did," he said. "She tried to kill me." Rigel's expression didn't change. Jamie then turned and walked down the dock toward the marina office. He jerked his head over his shoulder and looked back. "I'm going to call the police. She tried to kill me. She's going to get it." Phaedrus looked up at Rigel and the other man, who was still staring. "I better go down and see what happened," Phaedrus said. "You better get out of here," Rigel said. "What? Why? I haven't done anything." "That doesn't matter," Rigel said. His face had that same angry look he had at breakfast in Kingston. At the far side of the marina, Phoebus could see Jamie at the marina office, saying something to the people standing there. He was gesticulating, waving one arm, holding his face with the other. The man behind Rigel started to walk over there. Rigel said, "I'm going over there too to see what he's saying." He left, and Phoebus could see that at the marina office where Rigel was headed, some sort of argument was going on. What was Lila doing now? Down below, it was ominously quiet. He stepped down the ladder and saw that the door to the forecabin was shut. Phoebus went to the door, opened it slowly, and saw Lila on the bunk. Her nose was bleeding. In her hand was a pocket knife. The hypnotic look of last night was all gone. The sheet underneath her had some small blood spots. "Why did you do it?" he asked. "He killed my baby." "How?" She pointed to the floor below the bunk. Phoebus saw the doll laying face down on the floor. He watched her for a moment, wanting to be careful what to say. Finally he said, "Shall I pick it up?" Lila didn't say anything. He picked up the doll very carefully, using both hands, and carefully set it beside her. "This is a bad place," Lila said. Phoebus stepped into the head and got a handful of toilet paper for the nosebleed and brought it to her. "Let me see," he said. Her nose didn't look broken, but she was starting to puff up under one eye. He saw that her hand was clenched tight on the jackknife. This wasn't a time to talk about it. He heard a rapping on the hull. When he got up the ladder, he saw it was Rigel again. "He's gone," Rigel said, "but they're upset. Some of them want to call the police. I told them you were just leaving. It will be a lot easier if you just left now." "What are the police going to do?" Phoebus says. Rigel looked exasperated. "You can be here 5 more seconds, or you can be here 5 more weeks. Which do you want?" Phoebus thought about it. "Okay," he said, "untie the bow line." "You'll have to untie it yourself." "What's the matter with you?" "Aiding and abetting, for Christ's sake. I've got to face those people after you leave." Phoebus looked at him and shook his head. God, what a mess. He jumped onto the dock, grabbed the electric power cord, and threw it aboard, uncleating the stern line, and threw it aboard too. As he went forward to take off the bow lines, he saw that people who had gathered at the office were looking down his way. Crazy how Rigel had shown up just at this minute. And he was right, as usual. Phoebus threw the bow lines aboard, and with his hands on the boat's bow, shoved with all his might to get the heavy hull clear of the dock. The current was already starting to move the stern away. Then he grabbed a stanchion and pulled himself aboard. "There's an anchorage inside Sandy Hook," Rigel said. "Horseshoe Bay. It's on the chart." Phoebus moved aft smartly over the tangled lines to get control of the boat, but in the cockpit he saw the key was out of the engine. The boat was out of control now, but for a moment it didn't matter, because the current was carrying it into the river and away from the dock. He jumped down below, opened the key drawer under the chart table and found the key, then scampered up again and inserted it and turned over the engine. This would be a great time for it to fail. It didn't. It took hold, and he let it idle for a while. At the dock, now 60 or 70 feet away, Rigel was talking to some people who had gathered around him. Phoebus shifted into gear, increased the throttle, and waved to them. They didn't wave back, but they were watching him. One of them cupped his hands and shouted something, but the sound of the diesel was too loud for it to be heard. Phoebus waved to them and headed out into the river toward the New Jersey shore. Phew! As he looked back over his shoulder, he saw the water of the river between the boat and the marina become wider and wider, and the figures become smaller and smaller. They seemed to diminish in importance as they diminished in size. The whole city was starting to take shape from the perspective of the water now. The marina was sinking back into the skyline of the city. The green trees of the parkway dominated it now, and the apartments rising above the parkway dominated the trees. Now he could see some large skyscrapers at the center of the island rising above the apartments. The giant! It gave him an eerie feeling. This time he barely slipped out of its grasp.